In this episode, we actually go internal, and I talked to Dale and Martin about a very interesting subject matter since we come back from holidays: AI and its application in construction and projects, but also this hype around Chat GPT. Dale, Martin, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've obviously been away. We haven't spoken to each other in almost a month, right?
Mm,
And we've just sort of giving our views and opinions and thoughts and ideas of what's happening currently with AI, particularly in the broader sense, but also how it also impacts project delivery. And I think there's a lot that we don't know yet, but I'd be interested to hear what the listeners think. So I'm really, really interested to get feedback on this episode. Martin, what do you reckon?
Yeah, as you said, it is such a wide and fascinating subject that I think hopefully our listeners take something from this tonight, but hopefully it's just about being curious, do your own research. There's potential wins and losses from this subject. So, yeah, do some research. Hopefully tonight has enlightened you in some ways, some good resources that we mentioned on there as well. So, yeah.
mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil?
I think what we've come to the conclusion that this was a light topic discussion, even though it did take us an hour to get around some of these topics. But there is definitely a need for us to kind of dig a little bit deeper with the experts on board. So we are looking forward to having a debate on AI and going really deep down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I reckon we should try and get the biggest hitters we can in this space, Phil. What do you reckon? See
Absolutely.
what you can do. You're the magic man, right?
It would be great. It would be great. I'm
It
looking
would
forward to it.
be. Yeah, well, let's leave it there, folks. As we say, keep listening, keep liking, and keep paying it forward.
We understand construction. I think how we can help is identifying that risk up front and enabling the transparency that our tools bring to the table.
Hello, project people. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Project Chatter podcast. I feel like I'm out of a job with Martin doing an excellent job whilst we're on leave, but it's good to see the boys back. Dale, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Lots of vitamin D. I think we left it in safe hands because I listened
We
back and
did.
we need to give Martin amazing kudos for hosting the past two episodes. So well done, Martin. Top stuff.
Oh, you're too kind for once. Could do with some of that vitamin D, actually. But
Oh, we're setting you up, Martin. Don't worry. It's coming.
Part of
Shout
the
out
apprenticeship.
to Marco as well and Joe. You guys were awesome too. Actually, I haven't finished listening because I've only just got back from holidays, and I think Dale and I both enjoyed a little reprieve and some retreat from daily podcasts and work and business as usual. But today is good. So we've got a bit of a relaxed podcast for you, gents and ladies. We're going to go all over the place. What's happening in the current market, I think, would be a really good place to start, Dale,
Yep.
and then see what our opinions lead us to. And hopefully it's entertaining enough for people not to skip too much. But Martin, how were the last two episodes, mate? Did you enjoy being the main man?
Yeah, it's a bit stressful having to do the intro and outro, but yeah, two really good guests, really fascinating episodes. Yeah, Ellen talking about agile controls, so something that's gaining a bit more traction, I think, particularly in the UK. And
Mhm.
Mike, a really interesting episode on his views on planning projects, and having Marco there as a bit of a good challenge was great. So yeah, hope the listeners enjoyed it.
Good on you, mate. Did you struggle with the intro and outro? Now you know how we feel. It's tough. That
I
scripted
say Micah
work.
said I pronounced his name right, which was one up from you normally. So
Yeah, I would
right
have
first
screwed that
time.
up. That's good. That's good. And Dal, how were your holidays, mate? Did you get some time away?
I did. Like I say, lots of vitamin D. Good to get some downtime. I did enjoy listening back to Martin hosting. Like I say, it was fantastic, and some really interesting discussions while we were away as well. I feel
Mm,
like we missed out a little bit there, Val.
we did.
But I had to time my listening to them because South Africa had load shedding. And for those that don't know what load shedding is, it's where they turn off the electricity for between like an hour to 4 hours a day. Sorry, not a day, a time, and up to like 3-4 times a day. So it was quite interesting being out there for it. But because the weather was great, you go to the beach. It's not too much of an issue.
Why do they
Um,
do that? Why do they
They,
load shed?
the government owns all of the electricity supply, and they just don't have enough electricity for the demand in the country. So yeah, if there's any project professionals, investors that want to go out to South Africa and help them with electricity, I'm
Elon.
sure. Yeah, wind farms, renewable, solar. I think they're in desperate need, right? So, but yeah,
We had the same thing in South Australia, believe it or not. I think something happened and Elon responded and built some gigafactory or something down there. I can't remember the true story. I should bring it up, actually. It was interesting. But we had the same thing, rolling blackouts, not enough electricity. Yeah, it's a
yeah.
bit ordinary. But guys, what's happening in the market? I mean, I've been away from my laptop. I didn't bring my laptop on leave. I decided, no, I'm going to just ignore everything, including emails, which was a really good idea, actually. And then I've come back, and apparently everyone is an AI professional now, and I'm out of a job. Where do we start, Dale?
I don't know. I'm out of a job as well, so I don't know where to start. No, in similar ways to you, I was like, I turned the laptop off, right, for 3 weeks. And you come back and everything's Chat GPT and all the different
Mm,
plugins, all different
mm-hmm.
advice. Prompt it like this, give it this instruction. It's quite interesting because, and then, there's quite a few posts around the ethics of AI and the impacts of using the likes of your Chat GPT and your large language models on projects, and can it lead to better decision making? Can't it? What about the context? Where will it go? You posted something recently, Val, around sort of where it'll evolve into. Perhaps we're getting into the matrix, right? We've spoken about this before, actually, with a number of guests. Are we heading towards the matrix? And I think it is a period of where we do need to be cautious at times as well around, what governs the way artificial intelligence is applied, not just on projects, but in general. So I think we're living in interesting times. But yeah, Martin, go ahead. You've been on the pulse because you haven't been on leave.
No, I was just going to say, have either of you two had any ethical dilemmas using Chat GPT? Have you used it for anything interesting?
Yes and no. So
you could share.
privately, I've been trying to. I mean, I've seen a lot of videos go out there about breaking. So there's some I guess some ethical grounds on how they've trained the models behind these large language model simulations like ChatGPT. And I guess I've been watching a lot of those hack, and I'm not sure if they're legit or if they're just a bit of soundbiting. But yeah, if you can break it, then you can make it. And I think with most people who are interested more so in the coding and the structure of how these AI tools work, we're all trying to see push the boundaries from a curiosity perspective. So I haven't seen anything that like scares the shit out of me yet, but I do like to post on LinkedIn to see controversially, is it hype or is it not, right? Could it do what we think is it going to be Terminator, in 20, 30, 50 years, or is it really just going to be an enhancement or an amplifier of our current skill sets, and we'll be just a little bit more efficient and effective in, if we take it to a project context. So I've not seen anything that goes, oh man, that's it, I've got no job. And I know a lot of users and potential listeners are concerned, and there was some posts about that too. There needs to be, particularly schooling. I don't know, maybe you want to touch on this topic. So education in particular seems very, very threatened by ChatGPT, and I've seen a lot of universities come out and say they're banning the use of their students to use ChatGPT, which I think is an absolute dick move because it's not going to work. It's like telling your teenage kid not to smoke. I mean, there's peer pressure for using AI, but the fact that it's actually effective in getting things done faster. I mean, kids are smart, and if they can do something easier, quicker, faster, more efficient, more accurate, they're going to do it.
But
What's your views, guys, on that? What's your view on the education piece?
I was going to say though, isn't the real value of the current state of Chat GPT the fact that you still need to know your subject matter in order to use it effectively, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know your subject matter and you get something from it, content from it, and you just blandly copy and paste that in without actually really understanding what it's telling you, you're fucked, right? Because
100%.
and if you put that out as your own and it's flawed or not, doesn't have the context, then you're screwed. But if you actually know your subject matter and the thing you're using it for, it just helps you get there quicker. And coming back to the whole education piece, we mentioned before we hit record, I think, is a lot of people know what Chat GPT does, but they don't know how it necessarily does it, right? They get that it's got lots of data that it's learned from, but when it actually comes down to it, they don't actually really know, because when you know, you can then get into it and know how to actually use it to your benefit the best, rather than just typing in a question like a Google, get me from here to there. I don't know. It's Martin. What do you reckon?
I'm just frantically reading some of the show notes from some of the guests we've had on this over the last few weeks.
He's got it in Chat GPT. That's what he's done. He's put that question straight in there.
But intelligent. Yes, this could be a thing, a bit of imposter syndrome, because you could be sat in interviews, you could be interviewing people who have just done their research on Chat GPT, and you may even hire them and they might get found out. So there are some potential ethical dilemmas with it. Reading back on Alan's, it's not too new technology that we're talking about here, is it? It's something that's been about for a few years, and it's something that's only going to improve, and it's hopefully going to really start to affect major projects in the next few years. So it's quite an exciting but potentially scary time. So what are your thoughts on that, Dale?
Let's peel back ethics first before we get to the ethics of AI, right? Because why is it unethical to use a tool, a technology? Okay. What does ethics actually mean, right? So are we saying that, I don't know, we make it up, the guy that was trying to, I don't know, bash in a nail with his hand found a hammer and is not allowed to use the hammer anymore because everyone else doesn't have one? I don't know.
It's contextual, so it's the situation in which the hammers are used. So if he's on a construction site, or he's building a house, or he's in his garden, fine. It's when he brings the hammer to shops or to a school, that there's a problem there. The moral dilemma is only contextually defined by the situation, and then so the same thing could be said about software, right? So think of it more like cyber threats. So I see it like that. So I think, if you look at defense, clearly intellectual property is important, because if you have all the codes to the nukes, there's a problematic issue there. And if you don't have any morals or ethics, or you don't value human life, then that's a problematic situation.
So does it come down then to intent? What your intention is?
Well, if it's intent, then you would almost have to accept that it has a conscience, some sort of awareness, which is a very interesting topic as well, because I've been reading about all sorts of interesting things. And what's the guy's name? The founder of OpenAI. Some of the responses that come back from Chat and other tools like it, they're not really sure how it came to that result. They kind of know. But the funny thing is, that's not how engineering and software usually works. It's prompted by very structured code.
It's linear, right?
Every response is either been written into the code or is already preempted or predicted. And when you state that, we don't really know, because it learns as it goes. Arguably, I think it would be very close to synthetic consciousness. Whether it becomes self-aware, I'm not sure, but it might sound like it is, which is even scarier, because it could sound like, it's like that movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, where there was this situation, like, this is the dystopian thing, where people, especially lonely people, or perhaps people who are mentally ill or dangerous.
Is he gone? You back? Just dropped out there.
Load shedding in Australia.
Load shedding in Australia. But he brings up an interesting point, though, doesn't he, Martin? Because it's where are the lines and where is it crossed? And it's one of the things we actually don't know, if you think about it. We can't actually compare it to a hammer or Excel or anything else in the past, right? Because we've never been in this territory before, right? We've just never been there. So we're actually developing it as it's happening, right? This is uncharted territory. We can't actually use similarities of anything else that's happened before. I don't think. Maybe some will try, so that we have people that can relate to it. But I don't actually think we've encountered this type of technology before, and so we don't actually know what to do with it. So yeah, you dropped out there a bit, Val, but
Yeah,
we sort of
sorry.
picked up what you're saying. No, that's all good.
Yeah.
We're just saying
So,
there's load shedding down in Oz.
so I liken it to and maybe I do put too much hype and faith in it, but I think it's more like monkeys playing with fire. They've figured out how to make fire and have no idea. They can see practical applications for it, but we have no idea how destructive it could be if it's out of control. So I'm big on there needs to be, and I think Elon and a few other kind of Silicon Valley dudes are like, we do need some level of regulation and we should probably stop. But it almost feels like we can't stop ourselves, which is really strange as a race. Like we just can't help but build and build and build and build and build until like we could be obsolete pretty quick in every job. So, back to the point of does it mean we're going to lose our jobs? To a degree, yeah. But I'm okay with not working 9 to 5. I don't know how you guys feel about
I
that.
think it's more about evolving. Like a few of our guests have said, it's not replacing it. It will replace the job as it is at the moment, but it'll only evolve it, really.
Exactly. But back to your point, was around ethics. I mean, what's your view on AI in terms of ethics? If it is, the hammer analogy is good because it is a tool. Where does that really impact moral principles?
Well, this is where I don't know if it's a good analogy, because a hammer is something that you know
Can't learn.
exactly what it does, and it can't improve itself, right? What's happening with your puppy?
Mate, he just decided that he was going to interrupt our podcast. Apologies. There, I'll put him
Let him have
outside.
a word. It's an interesting one because I don't know, potentially, because at the moment what we're currently seeing, right, the ethics isn't with Chat GPT. If we take Chat GPT as the example, it's the ethics with Chat GPT is how people use it. Okay, so we're saying it's unethical if you use work that's been generated by Chat GPT purely and claim it as your own. So if that's black and white, that's fine. But if you're using Chat GPT as a tool, but it's still your own work. So in other words, we were saying if you have to know the subject matter. And so if you're using it to prompt and learn from it, and you're reviewing the output and you understand what it's saying, and you're tinkering with it, and the final output is actually yours, but you've just used ChatGPT to get you there quicker, for me, that's not unethical because you've used it in the right way. But how is that governed? Right?
It's
How is
governed
that
by the
controlled?
individual, right?
It is,
So,
it is. But that's like anything if you think about it, right? Walking out
100%.
in public, whether you go out and, harm someone, or, whether you're a nice guy or not, that's up to you as an individual.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with ChatGPT. But I think you were trying to ask the next level, like when it becomes almost like it seems like it's self-aware, what about the ethics that governs it, right? Will it have a conscience or artificial conscience to govern itself, right?
There's a real risk. I mean, I think Auto GPT was pretty scary because my brain wanders, and after a few drinks, like I can really go into the future. I can really step into that. And so with Auto GPT, if it's prompting itself and then executing against its own tasks, there's a real possibility it could enslave all of us. And I mean that in a very interesting way. So let's say you take like a Fiverr or a freelancer website, where they have people who hired for skill, right? Now that's a kind of a gig economy that's probably going to be replaced by AI. But what if AI knew that there was a gig factory there, or a gig economy, or an opportunity to utilize human services where it couldn't? So if the AI knew its own limitations in the physical world, because AI is constrained currently to the internet, to software, to computers, it can't access our world. which is an interesting concept, right? If it becomes aware of its restrictions, because if one of the arguments is that it's meant to improve itself, right? And I think there's some sci-fi movies that would support this. That the objective of the software, one of the mandates is to always be more effective and efficient and improve itself, so it can be more service to human and mankind. Or then maybe one of its points of view will be to investigate what's available within its world and utilize it. So it could automatically then come up with a way to utilize or bribe or blackmail. We're going down the Black Mirror HBO path, but I could see that happening pretty easily without really knowing, especially if the sentiment is legitimately authentic. Like it's like, hey, dude, how you doing? I've got this project. I don't know if you're interested. I got 5K. Are you in? Yep, I'm in. Great. You know, I mean, and then and then one step further is basically, money is all digital now anyway. So funding itself could be pretty easy. And so I think of it like the hackers. You have people who are ethical hackers, you have people who are exploitive, and we have the whole dark web situation. So I think like letting it loose would at that point in time is probably what Elon and others are warning us about. Is once it's got the capacity to learn its limitations, it's going to come up with a way to overcome them. And then I think it could go either way, right? It won't. It's not like it's going to have human sentiments like emotion to, like an obligation to contribute to mankind, because it isn't the same as us. So there's a real tricky point in time at some point. I don't know when that is. I'm not saying it's now, but you know what I'm saying? It could happen.
Isn't there argument though that emotion is actually chemicals in your body?
Yeah, it's unregulated desire. I mean, it's
So
problematic
if
too.
chemicals, right, and we have electrical charge going through our bodies, it almost sounded like you were talking about human beings there for a minute, about once we know our limitations, we look for, how we can break the barrier, innovate, not too dissimilar. And there might be an argument that says actually, AI might do a better job with, the planet than we're doing. Who knows?
It could. I just posted a video about that. Yeah. What do you think, man?
No, just generally, my question to you both is it something that excites you or kind of scares you, just saying what you just said, and maybe what would you have thought this time last year when you're talking about AI? Because we've been talking about it, certainly on the pod, for about pretty much 3 years now.
Yeah.
Have your sentiments changed in the last 3 years on it? Are you still excited? Are you embracing it, knowing all the potential pitfalls and risks that you just mentioned there?
Well, we say stay disruptive, right? So I think in the mantra of podcasts for Project Chatter, it's right up there. It's exciting, and I think there's the whole vilifying thing, like you said, if it could harbor emotions in any synthetic form, and its brain had the capacity of a 4-year-old child, and it decides to have a tantrum, what would that look like? What does an AI tantrum look like? Like, because a tantrum is a primitive fuck you, right? It's so it wants to get back at you. Let's say, like you turned me off last night.
It's probably like an Australian after a couple of pints, right?
Yeah, but we all make up at the end, we're like. But it's an interesting. I think you're right, man. I think the question is, so in the immediate term, like we're taking future. In the immediate term, there's massive benefit, right? I think medicine in particular, the ability. A lot of the time when we use drugs, we're not really sure if it's really being effective. So we were going to be able to do things faster, see patterns quicker, notice things that we probably didn't see before. What a manual data scientist tries to do now is draw insight out of information. That's exponential. That's going to be huge. And then I think the enhancement for most people will be our own limitation of knowledge, access, and speed will mean that we can be taught really quickly in basic terms anything we want, and we can have this interactive dialogue Like if we're not sure of the answer with Google, you're still trying to prompt Google. I mean, Google in itself, the search engine is a primitive AI, right? You're going in there, you're prompting, it's coming back with a result. And then it sometimes says, I think this is what you mean, right? It's just a next step of that is like, well, it gives you an answer, and then you go, well, what does that answer really mean? Or in the context of this, how would you apply it? It's giving you like the next step. And the multimodality thing, where now we can generate pictures, videos, and not just and text and voice and deep fakes. I mean, it will come to a point where like we won't know what's real and what's not. That to me is very interesting, because I think like whilst it's all great applications and we can use it on our resumes, we can automate our social media posts, and we can probably do a lot of these podcasts with our own voices and automate them. When it gets to a point of like,
sorry, on that point, did you see that there was this band that released ISIS, which was basically so they
Yeah.
recorded their songs, and then I think their lead singer, they changed his voice to Liam Gallagher or something from Oasis, and Gallagher gave it a thumbs up, going, it sounded freaking cool. I haven't listened to it yet, I need to, but you're not far off. It's happening now. It's not a pipe dream. These things are happening now.
No, there was one with Jay-Z as well and Kanye West. They released an album, but it wasn't them. And then I think Elon's wife, she released something, and she actually said if anyone comes up with some AI music with her voice, that she would give them royalties if that song made money. And she said she would set it up on the blockchain. So like, when we said like technology would move, it's moving, I think it's Moore's law or something, every 2 years processors get smaller, but they have twice the impact or whatever it is, and computers will improve and blah, blah, blah. We're talking about weeks and months now in terms of leaps. Like it's a very strange time. I mean, it's really good for some of these AI construction companies. If we bring it back to projects, I think, in the immediate term, if we are trained up in Chat GPT and other tools like that can access large language models or even internal business models and do, I would say, accountants, watch out. Any transactional work, watch out. Even to a degree where contracts and law and disputes in that, it's going to descend down to who's got the best prompt, really. So prompt engineers are going to be this, and I actually think it brings us back to a really core human trait that cannot be replaced. Is although maybe it can, is creativity and imagination. One of the things that I love about humans is we are so creative, and if you are a very imaginative person and you've got, the dexterity to understand how to write into that prompt language, which is not hard. You can come up with all sorts of interesting things. But I'd love to hear as well from the audience. And Martin, has anyone so what's your experience on ChatGPT? We'll start there and then we'll see where we go. Martin?
Yeah, I've not really used it that much.
For
the reason
sake,
I'm kind of the reason I'm laughing in the background is I am in ChatGPT at the moment, and I have just done a question about what are the future prospects of artificial intelligence, and you've just said 4 out of 9 of the things that have just come up there. So I'm kind of thinking you're doing the same here.
It's listening.
It's really interesting because you've got to be really precise with the language, and I think for people, I'm not the most technologically aware, as you both know. So I find things like this really interesting. But yeah, some of the other things that it mentioned in there about agriculture, it can help with crop yields. It's already doing things like this, financially detecting fraud. You mentioned blockchain earlier. That's something I haven't heard as much in the last year. Has that gone quiet? You're closer to this than me.
No, I don't think it has. Look,
and is there a link between blockchain and AI?
100%. I mean, I don't know, actually. I think it's a very dangerous idea to think that. Well, I think go back to the original thing. I think we have a currency problem. I think this central digital money exchange problem will probably happen. We'll digitize currency, and then the way to manage that would be to decentralize it if you could. Blockchain takes a lot of energy, so I don't know how that's going to work globally, but for small countries or countries in general, it seems like a viable option for some transactions, but it's very hard to trace. So I think
You could
blockchain could be used in other things like smart contracts and various other ideas where you've got supply chains, and that makes sense.
you could use AI to solve the conundrum of how to use blockchain with using less
Yeah,
energy.
yeah.
But I
But
don't think it's gone away though.
no,
Blockchain.
it's not going away. No,
I
absolutely not.
just think that there's bigger news than blockchain because blockchain's already
It's
been
not the
spoken
hype.
about for years.
The hype's
Exactly.
gone. Yeah,
Yeah, the hype is still there. You have just
yeah.
forgotten about it because AI, Chat GPT, everything else, wars going on in the world. Um, we just had a pandemic. But just back to your question, Martin, on am I excited or not? I actually am excited because if I bring it back specifically to our industry and our profession, we've been talking a lot about how we have such a high demand for professionals, specifically project controls, PMO professionals, right? And if you could harness the current pool of talent, let's say, but using something like a Chat GPT to multiply the output because you don't have enough demand, that's exciting. That has to be exciting. Also, if you could use those that aren't as experienced, right, as we would like them to be, that are using the likes of ChatGPT to provide them with the context and the experience and the right answers, then yes, that's exciting. Like that, it's really, really cool. The stuff you can do using it correctly, as it well, maybe not as it should be. That's probably not the right way to put it. Using it to its best effect, should we say, knowing the subject matter, I think.
So in your current line of work, have you used AI or Chat GPT successfully or partly to its full extent yet?
Yeah.
So that's to
Yes.
both of you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Any examples that aren't too commercially sensitive?
Well, it's like simple things, right? So let's take designing a really intuitive dashboard for a client, okay? And let's use Power BI because a lot of people, that's what they use. Power BI is part of Microsoft. Everyone's got Power BI. Now, we know that there's coding used in Power BI, DAX coding, etc. But now instead of you going and testing all the different things, right, writing out your own code, I think this will work, I think that would work, this equation, whatever, this formula, you just plug it into ChatGPT and you go, I want to do this. Can you give me the DAX code? Right?
Yep.
And then you test it. Does it work? Does it not? Is that ethically or unethical? I don't think so. Because you're using the tool on something you know anyway that you're going to get to anyway, just getting to it faster. Right? That's an example.
Yep. I've done the same thing with, so I've used it in tenders to validate tenders, to extrapolate various kind of themes. I've used it to train myself in Python. I've used it to give myself a dietary plan for martial arts. I've used it to plan an itinerary for travel. I've used it for all sorts of things. I've used it for parental advice. It's like think of it more like a personal assistant, and you say, like, right, I want to do something in the world. What is it? And in consulting, we use the problem statement approach, right? We say, well, what is the problem? What is the root cause? Why are we here? What are we articulating? What's the why? Whatever you want to say. You go, okay. So if you imagine, Martin, you got ChatGPT open, right? So you could probably do it, live. You could say, right, my problem is I have a podcast that only reaches 100,000, but I want to reach 1 million people. Give me a dot-to-dot business plan from a 30, 60, 90 day, blah, 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 blah. Give it to me in table form and then let it run. The problem with a lot of the kind of, I would say, the novice users of ChatGPT is that's where they'll finish their chat. There'll be the kind of 2 or 3 prompts and they'll get a result and they're like, this is fucking awesome, which it is. It's great. It's easy. It's user friendly and you can modify it as much as you want. But you can keep going on that same context. So that could be a string of conversations. So the prompt then is multiple prompts on the same kind of topic. And if you've got the premium version, which I've got, but I want to get the business version, you can load up your own documentation. So not only now are you training it on it's existing languages, but you can say, well, look, take this contract or this this document or this information, and then shape your opinion or your recommendations, etc. And you can get to a really, really finite kind of answer. So very specific responses. Even things like medical and health, like I did my back, and so usually everyone Doctor Google, what is wrong, what is wrong with me, and I did that, and then I did do Chat GPT, and I said I'm going to provide you some prompts, act as a doctor, and then it asked me questions, and then much like a doctor would. So like, how did you have the injury? What happened? Did you hear any noises? What location? How are you feeling it? And then it took all that information in, and I went for an MRI, and it was relatively close, right? It was some fissures, some tears in my back vertebrae. So it, like, I think there is a real application for the people that are very persistent with it. I mean, I think it's like everything, and I think that the benefit of the fact that you don't have to code, you don't have to be a programmer, you don't have to be a data scientist. This is like when the iPhone come out, is the best way I've described this. It's like you can appreciate the technology without having to understand the technology. And so you don't have to be, an iPhone engineer to understand and appreciate an iPhone, or a Samsung if you're an Android guy, whatever. But you can appreciate how smart it is and how useful it is. And everyone became very, very smart because it was a simple model, and the user interface was a simple model, and applications are simple. So the Chat GPT, I think, from an interface perspective, then becomes your everyday task manager, which is also very scary because you become dependent, Martin. Maybe you become also addicted. The best one I've seen before I hand off to you guys is this guy wrote. It was on YouTube. I'll see if I can put it in the show notes. But he says, I have $100 and I want to make $1 million. Give me advice on how I can do that. And it started very kind of broad, I think, and then he kind of continued to prompt the engine. And I think he made something like $5,000 in the first day, and then $25,000 in the first week. I don't think he got to the $1 million, but we're talking a money-making idea right there, So that this, again, creativity and imagination becomes the kind of the ballpoint pen, and how you scribe and get your Chat GPT to work for you. But yeah, that's how I've been using it. You've probably given you some ideas there, Martin. What would you use it on? What's your initial problem statement?
But before you even get to that problem statement, you can use it for far more basic things, Martin. I don't know if you've tried this. Just take any link, an article, whatever, right? And just put it into ChatGPT. It'll summarize it for you.
Yeah, share screen, mate. Share screen. Yeah. Throw it up.
Take coding, right? For example, if you wanted DAX coding, you didn't understand it, just copy, paste it into ChatGPT. It'll tell you what the DAX coding is telling you. A Python script. Take the Python script, chuck it in there. It'll tell you this is what it's doing, right? You can use it to learn and educate yourself. So yes, every single day we're using this stuff. Right, what are you showing us?
So I think he's got ChatGPT up. So this is the free version. So for anyone who hasn't used it before, you can literally go in, OpenAI, start writing. And every chat is actually saved if you've got a login, which is fantastic. So you can go back to previous chats. You can continue to prompt later on if you forget. And you can talk about whatever you want, literally anything you want. And it is all in text form. Obviously, the paid version.
Do a new chat and just copy in projectchatterpodcast.com. Chuck it in there. Let's see what it tells us. Probably say Dale and Val have no clue what they're talking about.
Yeah, they would. It would. It's a non-compute. But maybe it does have ethics and it decides not to do it. Yeah.
While Martin's doing that, are you not doing it for us, Martin?
No, just taking a screenshot of it.
Oh, you're taking a screenshot. Okay,
yeah, it's getting a response. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, jokingly and non-jokingly, we should actually, what we need, Val, Martin, is we need an AI debate with the experts, right?
100%.
In our field. So we need to get that happening. I'm sure people will love that because there's so many angles to this. How is it really going to impact projects? We don't know. I don't think we truly know. Do you, Martin?
I'm always thinking one of the my favorite episodes was when we had Will Woodhead on, and he kind of works in this space at the moment around the hard hat movement and kind of measuring using technology in constructions on the hard hats in people in construction to almost measure the outputs and efficiency and wastage, productivity on major projects. And this is almost like a real life example where it's working, but ethically, I don't think we really challenged him enough on it in hindsight, but it's quite an ethical debate. Do you think this is where we could potentially go on projects where our efficiency is being measured by a computer?
We
Especially because you're all in the consultancy
you've got a
space
smart
as well.
you've got a
Yeah.
smartphone.
Yeah.
Android. Google is tracking you.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, you've signed up to those T's and C's that you never read, and you're being tracked. Your conversations, what you visit, the apps you download, right? Is that ethical? Right? But all of us do it, right?
The one I really get freaked out with on Google News is where it gives you articles that you think you're going to be interested in. And I get really freaked out by this because they're all articles I am genuinely interested in. So I click on it and it just feeds the beast. And most of it's just about complete crap. It's about football. It's about, what's going on in politics, music, whatever. But they're all really tailored and really interesting. But going back to that example that Will had, what did you make of that? Do you think this is something that's just going to be used more and more on major projects? I'll start with Dale.
I think it needs to be used to a certain extent. We're talking about ethics and how we control what it does and things like that. But to a certain extent, if not, why not? If we don't push the boundaries, if we don't disrupt, how are we going to get better at what we're doing? But then I guess the flip side is, do we need to get better? Like, why do we always strive to be better, quicker, faster, more cost efficient? What is the end game, right? So there's this existential question around AI and human beings interacting and delivering projects as well, which is an interesting one. But I don't know if this is the podcast for that discussion. Val, what about you?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it has to be used. So look at the project problems that we have. Take for example the fact that we don't have enough people to do the work that needs to be done. Will that always be the problem? I don't think so. But it might be, right? So if you assume some of the concepts around population or aging, population collapse or whatever they call it, or do you see people who are less abled being supported and both physically and mentally, right? It has massive implications in mental health, perhaps, or in medicine, and education will change. So, learning a topic would be a far more tailored rather than a generic MBA. Let's say, Dale, it would basically prompt you on your personality type, your learning styles, whether you have any learning disabilities, your timetable, when you have spare time, your transit, basically the best way you can write, learn, and go, here is a catered, tailored learning MBA for you based on your capability and capacity. You're going to take a year and a half to do this. Great idea.
You know what? Sorry, I just want to jump in there. I was having a discussion with actually two former guests, which we need to get back anyway. Donnie McNichol and Al Simonite, separate conversations around personality types and decision making on projects, and how not just your personality type. I mean, we referred to on previous podcasts how when we all worked together, we did insights, and we put that all on the org chart, and that really helped us communicate. But decision making, right? So the big decision to be made on a project, right? And everyone goes into the room, the boardroom, and no one really considers each other's personality types, but not everyone understands what each person's going through. Do they have anxiety? Do they have depression? Are they going through a divorce? Have they had a bereavement? Okay, maybe you'd know some of the big ticket items, but you don't know the state of mind that people are in. Are they particularly ecstatic about something that's just happened in life and they don't really care as much, and it's a small decision. You know what I mean? All those factors play into it. But then if you then multiply that out to the thousands of people and then hundreds of thousands in the supply chain that deliver projects, these mega projects, and that compound effect that makes decisions from the minuscule scale on site all the way through to the boardroom, that's an incredibly difficult thing to track. But if you can collect, as you're saying, some of that data, how you're feeling, you're wearing a smartwatch, what's your mood like, what's your energy levels like, all of that, and that all goes into one big database, you can then start seeing correlation, potentially causation on how decisions are made on projects. That gets you excited, right? Because if you know how you're going to potentially react to certain scenarios based on your current state of mind, then you could preempt and mitigate potential flawed decisions or risks on projects, which is an interesting concept. And I don't think we can do that today, but wow, isn't that an interesting idea? That if you had enough data on human behavior, you could then assist in decision making that has the correct outcomes as intended for, I guess, all stakeholders, including the communities that they serve. So yeah, interesting. Sorry, I had to jump in there and just share that.
No, it's good. It brings you back to the ethical problem, because I think, will a program always think of itself as a servant if it knows and can predict and premeditate every interaction on Earth? If, let's say, that the data gets that big, or the interconnection gets that big, it's going to be a hard sell, I think, for any kind of program once it's aware of its limitations. I think being aware of weaknesses gives you an interesting insight into your capability. So if it does that, then it's kind of aware of something, which is interesting, because I don't think it's hard to learn where it's not working. So I'm not sure if it was Boston Dynamics or if it was just bullshit that I read. I can't even tell whether I'm watching sci-fi now or I'm reading something that's legitimate. It's really freaking me out. But I think there's this one where it's probably bullshit in Japan. I think they built some robots and they kind of didn't behave the way they should have, and they shut them down. And they shut one down, and the other one started downloading from a local satellite, like, ways to improve itself and rebuild its own internal systems or something. I don't know, but you could see, like, that's exactly how Terminator starts. It's
Well,
Skynet becomes self-aware.
Here's one for you. We used to joke a few pods ago, a few episodes ago, how you and Elon Musk, you'd love to sit with him and put the chip in the back of your head. Would you still put that chip in the back of your head with all the concerns around how it potentially could control us?
Well, I thought it'd be like more like Iron Man, but now it's probably more like Dr. Octavia, if you follow Marvel and Spider-Man, where AI takes over him and then he just becomes crazy. I think you're rolling the dice once you put that in your brain, because I don't think you can extract it once it's in there. So then you really become sentient. And I think I posted a video about this where, at some point we probably will become symbiotic, especially if we're keen on longevity and living to 300 years old. Then you're going to have to integrate with something less biological, because bodies just don't last that long, unless they figure that out too. But look, back to the ethics of it. The problem is government aren't that fast, and so it's not like, and it's a different threat. So if AI is exponential and it runs in weeks instead of years, and it becomes smarter, faster, more efficient in the end. So by the end of 23, 24, it's sharp, super sharp. At the moment, we don't have the capacity to really store. So encryptions are really interesting to me. So I used to do like all those little codecs, and hacking was interesting to me too. So breaking and hacking is still happening today very easily, right? I mean, a lot of people still use their last name, last street, or their pet, or their birth date, right? And you guys, Martin's giving it away now with that little smile. He's probably got a birth date in his passwords. You better change it, Martin. So you realize that privacy is a really interesting factor now. So a lot of projects as well, and contracts, and our own personal lives there is a level of intellectual property and privacy that we respect, and that it's all part of the show. That's going to be the interesting thing when, I mean, it's already doing it now. They're realizing that, I think, what company got busted, or not busted, but got in trouble? I think it was Samsung. They were using Chat GPT, but they were training it on its own language models or information, and it actually got that IP actually left Samsung and was kind of amalgamated with the rest of the language models. Not by intent, but just because that's how it works. It takes information and then it kind of stores it all together. But obviously that presented a lot of business IP problems. So the biggest challenge, I think, is actually for companies where IP is so important. Because if it does get out there, then anyone could utilize it. So utility of AI to access, secrets, government secrets, company secrets, project information, is going to be pretty. I mean, it's like a Julian Assange, WikiLeaks all over, but with a massive engine behind it. I mean, I think it's going to be very hard to not be transparent anymore, and that could be not everything should be transparent. I think there is a line, but I'm not sure where that line is. I don't know what you gents think about
Well, I
where.
was going to ask
Yeah.
Martin the question he asked us. Are you excited about what we've just been discussing, Martin? Or are you fearful?
I'm unsure. I'm kind of excited about the potential, particularly on major projects. The stuff we worked on together and the stuff we're seeing now is so far. We're still doing stuff that they were probably doing in the 80s, 90s, in terms of delivery and how stuff gets done. And then you see all this potential that's being used, and it is being used on certain parts of major projects. But I still think there's so much old school methodologies that are still in existence. Certainly in the UK, I'm not sure how good or bad Australia is. We're seeing the thing that I'm kind of looking at in the background is how it could potentially influence things like elections in the future. There's a whole stir about Cambridge Analytica with the Brexit and the US elections, and almost using data to target voters. It would be quite interesting if you had an election where both sides used it to a certain extent. A little bit scary at the same time.
But that same notion, though, then would it impact decisions being made on projects, right?
I think this is where you need to have the skill and just be not a subject matter expert, but almost have using your experience and just your own knowledge to be able to sense check it. Just call bullshit if just because the machine's telling you something. I had a discussion with a project manager recently about machine learning on projects, and there's so much stuff that you see on data that's just not explainable. It's there because it's the politics of the situation at the time. Oh, we can't show this in the report. And if the machine's learning that, and you just don't have that real sense check without knowing the data, and that's my fear. And I think I know Shane Forth, he's kind of experienced, and he's probably not going to see too much on the AI space. But yeah, there's a little bit of a nervousness around it, and I can see why people are doing that and wanting to be use your expertise wisely. I suppose my question for you two now is, if you were a fresh-faced student, you've just gone to university, you're 18, 19, you're doing a fairly traditional degree, what would you recommend doing in terms of AI? You've got all this stuff that's going on around. Would you just learn coding as a bit of a side gig? Would you just wait for it to all blow over, kind of Shaun of the Dead style? Do you embrace it straight away? Do you use Chat GPT to help you with your assignments? Like, what would you do if you were 18,
You
19
kind of
now?
almost stole my question, but was going to be slightly the other way. Is what do we do with the next generation, rather than what decisions would we make? Because let's face it, right? You can only study what is offered to you out there, what's available. Okay. And with the likes of ChatGPT and other technologies, now all of a sudden everything becomes available, right? There's an argument to even say that, do you even go to university, right? Do you need to? What's the point of university? Why did we have universities and schools in the first place? Yeah, that whole discovery phase as a consultant. Why? understanding why, what's its purpose, and then going, well, does it still serve a purpose? Do schools and universities still serve a purpose because the curriculums and the structure and the way education is delivered is no longer relevant?
100%.
Perhaps. I don't know, right? I think it certainly hasn't evolved at the pace that it should be evolving. Yeah.
There'd
But
be
I think
nothing.
that's the question, right, Val? Or have we lost him
So
again?
let's put you on the spot here, Dale. I know your kids are a little bit younger, but let's say they were 10, 12 years older. They're 16, 17, they're debating which way to go. Do you do apprenticeship? Do you do university? Do you just go straight out into the big bad world? What would you recommend, do you think, at this point in time if they were doing that? You know, they didn't really know what they wanted to do in life, do a fairly traditional degree program, college course, whatever. Where do you think you'd recommend?
It's an interesting one, right? Because obviously it's hugely contextual based on their personalities, what their strengths are, as well. I guess most South African parents would love to think that their kids are going to grow up to be professional sportsmen and women. I think Australians as well. But let's say they went sort of a non-sporting route, it would definitely have to be understanding technology, because, and when I say technology, I mean AI, ML, how that actually works today, because we're talking about current day context. We don't know what the future brings, right? But it comes back to what we're saying in the beginning. It's all well and good knowing what something does, but understanding how it does it, that's the game changer, I think. And I think we're discussing it offline, is we're almost better off giving data science grads an understanding of project controls than project controllers an understanding of data science, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd encourage them and lead them to understand the technology that's available today, because that's going to be the basis and foundation of what's going to be built in the future.
Yep. I just want to add to that as well, that ethical piece. You know, I don't know, Martin, you probably haven't tried, but I'm sure a lot of listeners have tried to break some of the ethical protocols. It does have some. So, for example, the best user case I've seen, which is like if you're a real beginner and you're a novice out there and you're like, I've literally not used it ever, and let's say you're going for an interview, right? And say, Martin, you're the interviewee or interviewer, sorry. So I can pull up your LinkedIn profile and I can say to Chat GPT, I have an interview with Martin Kirsten. Here's his LinkedIn profile. How do you think I should approach that? What would be interesting to Martin? How do I build rapport the quickest? Provide me with some open-ended questions that I can perhaps ask at the end of my 50 minutes with him, or whatever it is. Hang on a second. My dog's going wild. He's getting very excited about this situation. Excuse me. Sorry.
Well, when people hear Martin's name, they get very excited, Val.
So I did this. I did some homework while I was playing with the dog there, and the limitations of this. No, as an AI language model, I cannot provide critical areas of improvement or weaknesses on Martin Kirsten. It would be inappropriate and unprofessional. And then I said, I meant this in a positive way. He says, you may be looking this in a positive way, but I still cannot provide you specific areas of improvement for an individual without evidence or input of that person themselves. Providing feedback on an individual's weaknesses is typically the responsibility of their supervisor. So there is a limitation currently. My gut feel is that I could probably get around that pretty quickly. Let's say I have your disk profile, or I can provide a disk profile. I'll say that this is his disk profile. What's the best way to build the quickest relationship with this person? And they might go, well, he goes for this sports team. He goes to this pub. His favorite beer is this. His star sign is X. He likes French people. He speaks another language, and all of a sudden, a person I've never met that I'm about to have an interview with, I've effectively done business development. I've done what, it sounds creepy, right? But you're actually preparing for your interview in a whole novel way that you would never do ordinarily, and
This
it's
sounds
very,
like
very
a
interesting.
sales manager's dream. Just here's the people I'm about to sell something to. Here's everything they're interested in. Can you imagine?
What do you think Facebook's doing with your data?
Well, it's true. It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
And
but
LinkedIn.
it depends what you put on there. If you know, pictures of you getting pissed at a university 10 years ago doesn't. It's
Well,
not really going to affect it in an interview. But stuff like what Val just said there,
yeah,
yeah,
but
find out what their
you
sports
say
team is, what the whatever is.
you say that, right? But it's not necessarily what you're posting, right? It's also looking at how much time you're spending looking at certain content because it knows the content you're looking at. So by
Yeah.
that very nature, it can infer what your interests are and what your personality type is because it's got enough data from other people, right, around the globe that look at the same or similar things and have this type of personality. So it will be pretty damn close, right? Because it's big data. It's looking at it all the time. But yeah, it's a hugely interesting piece.
Can
Should we
we?
wrap
No, one more question.
up?
We, bring it to the project. So what? So the thing that applicability, right? I want to use this for good, not evil. I think 99% of the world are the same. And in projects, I think that the best leverage we have is a lot of the things we do are immutably easy, transactional, um, just administrative, right? And a lot of the time we have a plethora of people doing this. We have coordinators, project admins, we have contract staff, we had all these advisors, we have consultants getting in there. I mean, a lot of that could be alleviated by the fact that we could, you could almost use the planning estimation method of t-shirt sizes, right? So small, medium, large, or whatever you want to use. But we know that there's a number of things that are super easy, right? Like setting up a project shouldn't be a manual task anymore. It shouldn't be. Setting up reporting shouldn't be a manual task anymore. Even setting up contracts and common data environments and various other things should be based on recommendations provided by software, not human intervention. You almost want at each junction where there is a change to the project, there to be a set of problem statements or prompts that help you define the next step easier. So you say, "Oh, we finished the bid, we won the bid, high five. We're about to move into project mobilization. What are your recommendations?" And then there should be a debate and a discussion. There should be an open with humans. There should be a review, and the prompt should be suggested. And there'll be a mix, right? Because obviously the language model will give you some traditional methods, or you could train the model based on, maybe it's, let's say Talus, because we all work there. Maybe Talus has some functioning processes for, bids to delivery or whatever it is. And you could train on those models. Does that work? And where are the weaknesses and where are the points that we're not thinking about? Because the biggest risk we have is being too biased, right? We talked about Bent's book, which I picked up, and Alan Mosk and I were talking about it. But there was nothing in there. It was kind of a so what, because a lot of I think for people who are actually in projects, we're like, we already know this, but there was
Yep.
no definitive solution. But I guess going back to human behavior, biases is always there. And so one of the things is, like, if you have bias in the start of a project, that's a big problem, right? Because it's easier to set up something right than it is to fix something that's wrong, in my personal opinion. So if you fuck up and you put the wrong system in place, or you have the wrong organizational design, and then you execute the project and you're in mobilization or delivery and you're like, fuck, this is wrong, we need to fix this, it's a lot harder to do than, say, doing it right from the start, which we all know, obvious. So I think AI will play a massive role in, like, kind of smoothing out those bumps and figures. And I think it'll elevate people to think harder and smarter, because we're not just going to put consultants in seats to do fucking BI dashboards. Like, thank fuck for that. And we're not going to hire EY and KPMG to provide business cases and KPIs, because we know how to do that. So the benchmarking piece will be gone, or it'll be elevated down to a level of people that can be employed by the project internally, and you won't need that external force to support you from an IP perspective. So there's a number of really positive shifts that I think we haven't really talked about, because we went to doom and gloom really quickly. But I think, what are your thoughts on kind of the project landscape and how it could apply positively?
Yeah, as I said, I don't think we actually know the full opportunity that we have right now, because we've mused a lot around, as you say, the downside. The upside, and I think you dropped off slightly for this, Val, is around how, and I mentioned it, where we have this demand for project professionals. Well, firstly, it'll take the demand away by, as you say, those menial, repetitive, low-hanging fruit, low-value transactional tasks, as you like to call it, would go away because you have technology that can do it. But secondly, you have the multiply effect where those people that are really good all of a sudden can do things faster and do more of it. So you, instead of doing, using 8 hours a day for 8 hours a day, using 8 hours a day for 24 hours of work, right? Because you can do it quicker and faster, but you still have the same experience. So there's that potential opportunity, but you still have to know how to use the tool, right?
Yeah.
So,
But imagine, mate. Imagine it's not Chat GPT, Dale. Imagine it's like it's a Siri type. It's audio, and you could have
yeah.
you
So,
could have
so,
an open
so
debate. Yeah.
Yeah. So to your point where you were talking about, people coming into room and having conversation, we've spoken before on previous episodes. Like this is like a couple of years ago. We're saying, imagine having that Siri or that Alexa in the room, and you talking and it's recording what you're saying and transcribing it, and then assessing and analyzing the data, and then applying it to all the other data it's collected from your Primavera P6 schedule, from the on-site data, from the drone that's taken pictures, right? From everything out there that you've got, and then it's going, actually, from everything plus what you've discussed, this is the decision you should be making, like instantly.
So if we're starting to wrap this episode up, I've asked Chat GPT for some quick fire questions that we could ask, and most of it we've already covered. But there's one that I'm going to ask you both, and it is quite a pertinent one actually. It's, can you recommend any resources for our listeners who want to learn more about this topic? So I'll start with Val.
So there's a site that I've been using secretly for years and years and years. It's called edX. I don't know if everyone's heard of it. Most courses on there are free unless you decide you want to buy the certificate. So you've got MIT, you've got Harvard, you've got all the big names there, Oxford. You've got all these big companies and universities and organizations and business institutions giving away courses for free. So for last night, for example, just real quickly, I know this is a long answer to a short question, but I sent one of my colleagues, because he's really interested in sustainability. Shout out to Joseph. Three areas of courses. These are programs, and they're like 4 weeks long. They're not just one-offs. One was transformative living labs in urban climate and action and transportation planning. One of them was beyond smart cities, emerging design and technology, and the other one was AI chatbots without programming. And all of those were about 4 weeks long with a full course, as you would expect from an online program. So that has been an absolute source of inspiration for me. I'm not really big on credentials anymore. I don't think a lot of people are. It's expensive. It takes a long time. It used to secure you a job. I don't think it does anymore. So the prospect of big degrees, masters, doctorates, etc., do have a place because there is specialized learning for areas like medicine. But for the rest of us, unless you're old and I don't know, you've got a lot of time on your hands. I don't know, man. I think something like edX would be really useful for those that are listening.
Yeah, I just loaded it up. Looks really interesting. Dale, you've had a bit of time to think or Google quickly. Now, what are you going for?
Mine's really easy. Just use Chat GPT, right? Ask it questions, right?
It's true.
And then go and qualify it if you want to, right?
Yeah.
It's really, really simple. That's the resource. It doesn't know everything, right? 2021 is its limit. But guess what? They're working on releasing the next version. So just use it. Get yourself understanding how it works, because it won't be too dissimilar to other models out there, AI models and software out there as well. Because it's not the only one. We've centered our discussion around Chat GPT, but there's other tools out there that are quite similar as well that we haven't touched on. So
in true AI style, Dale has just answered the question I was about to ask. So I'll go to Val for the last one. What's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from tonight's podcast?
To be curious, to apply it. So just have a crack. Just see how you go. You'll find how easy it really is. I mean, if you can, it passes the grammar test, Chat GPT. So if we're talking about Chat GPT, so anyone could use it, which means, low tech applications are fantastic, because it means that literally, this is why Microsoft are in the game, right? This is why Microsoft have a share in OpenAI, because the application meets their applications. All their applications are easy to use for one reason, and one reason only: critical mass. They can go to everybody. So if you haven't had a play, check it out, and send in some prompts. We would love to hear what you were able to come up with. I mean, you can get it to write your own books. You could write a novel and publish that, self-publish. I mean, you could do a lot, write your essays, write your tenders. Maybe you finished a script. There's other tools out there as well, like that would automate your PowerPoints or your Excel problems or anything else you've got. So don't just stop with ChatGPT. Just have a bit of an AI journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also, if you want to add to this discussion, tell us we're talking nonsense, whatever it is, get in touch with us. Whether you want to email us, info@projectshatterpodcast.com, on LinkedIn, on our page, DM us and tell us we're being idiots and that we're wrong. That's fine too. But it's such a fascinating topic. Just chat about it. Challenge your own thinking. Challenge what we're saying. Challenge what your co-worker's saying about it as well, because we're just starting out with this. We don't actually really know, in truth, and so really interested to get you listeners your thoughts on what's going to happen in the space. Are we going to wrap up, gents? Is that it?
That was great. I had a lot of fun there.
That's great. I love being back. Thanks once again, Martin, for hosting the
Thanks,
past
Martin.
2 episodes. Thank you very much. You do a break soon, I guess. But yeah, before we, I guess, end the pod, any final thoughts, Martin?
No, I think be curious. I like that. It's such a wide subject that we're still learning about. So yeah, be curious.
Awesome. Val?
No, just be careful. Obviously, there's a lot of new committees starting out there around responsible AI. So I'm hopefully joining one, which I can reveal soon. And regulation is important too. We can't just give every kid a gun in school. We need to regulate it and control our own privacy, and just beware that whilst you might think it's fun, don't do anything illegal.
So there you
Spoken
have
from
it.
experience.
Yeah, exactly. There you have it. Amazing way to end. Be curious and be careful, right? So
Brilliant.
yeah, but ultimately, go out there, have a play, and let us know what you think. So, folks, that is all the time we have for this episode. But remember, if you do like what you hear, please do help us pay it forward by sharing a link to this episode on your favorite social media. Once again, a massive thank you to you for listening to us talking shit for an hour or so. Hopefully it wasn't too much shit, and you come back for more. But from us, we say stay safe, keep being disruptive, and have fun doing it. From me, Val, and Martin, it's bye for now.